Greetings, friends. You're on Ruslan Belov's channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine as of September 2nd, 2025. A large number of events took place today, so let's get started. Let's move on to the front line and begin with the Zaporizhia direction, where the armed forces of the Russian Federation continue their offensive. Over the past 24 hours, we haven't received any updates from the western Zaporizhia section. That is, the settlements of Kupiansk and Stepnohirsk. No additional news there. I remind you that yesterday, according to footage of objective control published by the Ukrainian side, the Russian Federation began advancing toward Novodanilivka. Some sources report that Russian units may have managed to slip into the village and dismount troops, but so far there's nothing to confirm this information. Therefore, we leave the map unchanged. But if we talk about the eastern Zaporizhia direction, the offensive continues there. Today, a number of cartographers, both neutral and pro-Ukrainian, confirmed the advance of Russian units east of the settlements of Novopil, Zelenoye Pole, Kamishevaka, Maliivka, and Voskresenka. The Russian army is gradually moving forward, and next in line are settlements such as Novoselivka, Ternov, and Berezova. Next, we move to the western Donetsk direction, and this is the first, let's say, a very good example of such a phenomenon as flag dropping by drones. I remind you that yesterday we devoted a lot of attention to this section. Yesterday morning, sources linked to the 46th Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine published video footage showing 2 Ukrainian soldiers raising a flag in the southeastern part of Udachne, allegedly declaring that the settlement had been completely cleared of Russian forces. Based on this footage, debates began. Some repainted the maps and so on. But literally an hour and a half later, Russian sources published footage showing 2 Russian soldiers raising the Russian flag in the central part of the settlement. So we saw some confusion. On the one hand, Ukrainian sources published one thing, on the other, Russian sources showed another. In reality, it's quite simple. When units move into a settlement located in a kill zone, the task is to raise a flag, quickly film it, and retreat as fast as possible. Well, today, according to pro-Russian experts, the Ukrainian soldiers failed to escape. I haven't seen the video yet. Several pro-Russian experts shared screenshots and attached photos, allegedly indicating that within seconds after the flag was raised, Ukrainian soldiers were targeted by drones. And that was the end of it. So here we have an interesting story, an interesting phenomenon. Now we move to the western Pokrovsk direction. Today, Russian sources published footage of a Russian drone flying over the settlement of Moravka and dropping leaflets, urging Ukrainian troops to surrender. In fact, this is part of a pattern in Russian military behavior. There is a high likelihood that soon after the leaflet drop, the Russian army will launch an assault. A final battle for this small settlement along the border between Dnipropetrovsk and Donetsk regions may begin in the near future. Slightly northeast or west of Pokrovsk, there are 2 settlements, Molodetska and Udachne. From here, very interesting reports are coming in. Pro-Russian experts claim that Russian forces advanced from Novoserhivka and Novonikolaivka toward Molodetsk and managed to secure its southern outskirts. So far, this hasn't been independently confirmed, but such an offensive could indeed be taking place. As for Udachne, today some neutral cartographers completely marked the settlement under Russian control. I remind you that pro-Russian experts had already marked Udachne as lost yesterday. Reports claimed it was fully cleared within the last 24-48 hours. And today we see a second story, similar to the one we discussed earlier, but this time from the Ukrainian side. Today, the 425th Assault Regiment published video footage claiming that Ukrainian troops successfully counterattacked, entered Udachne, and completely cleared it. We see several frames, explosions, Ukrainian units advancing without encountering resistance, and finally 2 Ukrainian soldiers raising the flag on the northwestern farms. Then the footage ends. The 425th Regiment reported that the settlement was supposedly back under Ukrainian control. However, we won't make map corrections yet, because this is clearly another example of manipulation. Udachne was lost by Ukrainian forces 3-4 days ago. Now, to create media buzz, small groups are sent in just to shoot a video from any building and later claim that the settlement remains under Ukrainian control. Let's check and compare the maps. This is how the maps looked just yesterday, at the end of September 1st, 2025. The territory was under Russian control, with a large grey zone. Today, based on Ukrainian published footage, a significant repaint has appeared. Now we move toward Pokrovsk itself, which also generated a large amount of news. According to open sources, Russian forces managed to advance slightly in southern Pokrovsk, near the Pokrovsk citadel. Literally a few private homes came under Russian control. Russian units are also actively advancing towards Shcherbinivka and Novopavlivka. Today, further Russian progress has been recorded here. In this footage, we see rocket artillery strikes on Ukrainian positions in Novopavlivka, a settlement located right behind Chunishine, where fierce battles are currently ongoing. On the eastern flank of the Pokrovsk agglomeration, the main events today, and in fact over the past several days, unfolded near Novoekonomichne. Based on objective control footage, the maps were updated, and some cartographers also made additional corrections. Let's start with the Mirnogradskaya mine area. Today, Ukrainian sources released video footage showing FPV drones striking Russian units storming the Pokrovsk agglomeration, particularly the settlement of Mirnohrad. The most important footage comes from the final seconds, where we see a strike on a building at the Mirnogradskaya mine. Ukrainian drone operators targeted that specific window and structure. The most important footage confirms the presence of Russian units at the Mirnogradskaya mine and shows that this mine is under the firm and complete control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. This is crucial for understanding the front line. On the other hand, Ukrainian sources today released footage showing Ukrainian units counterattacking this time in the settlement of Novoekonomichne. Several points were geolocated here, very short clips, and in the final seconds of the video, we again see another instance of false flag raising. According to the video, Ukrainian units were recorded on this street. Artillery strikes were carried out against these buildings. Ukrainian soldiers also entered this building via this route. At the end, we saw a flag raised on the roof of that structure. Based on this footage, adjustments were made to the maps. However, there is also a possibility that the southern part of Novoekonomichne is a kill zone. At least some pro-Russian experts, who claim to have contacts with units on the ground, state that the southern part of Novoekonomichne is not controlled by anyone. What we are seeing now is just another raid by a small group to film material, after which the Ukrainian side will retreat. But such versions exist, and we analyze them as well. For now, adjustments were made because a large amount of footage exists, and the depth of the Ukrainian advance into Novoekonomichne appears significant. Therefore, it's certain that at least some parts of the settlement are indeed under Ukrainian control. Next, we move to the Constantinople direction. Over the past day, nothing noteworthy has been recorded. Some pro-Russian cartographers show significant adjustments between Predtekin and the settlement of Oleksandro Shultin, but without any footage to confirm this. Fighting also continues in the area of the Kleban-Bik reservoir. This time, the Russian side is fully focused on the settlement of Pleshchivka. This is the next village along the Kryvyi-Torets River on the way to Konstantinivka, after Nelipivka. I remind you that according to the Russian Ministry of Defense, Nelipivka came under Russian control quite some time ago, several days or even weeks ago. Next, we move to the Siversk sector. This is probably the area of the most intense fighting, at least judging by the number of geolocations. The most important news comes from the settlement of Fedorivka. Today, the Russian Ministry of Defense announced that the south group of forces fully cleared Fedorivka. This is a critical settlement located on the Ukrainian side of the Bakhmutka River. The Bakhmutka flows from south to north toward the Siversky Donetsk River through Siversk, effectively splitting this stronghold into two. According to the Russian Ministry of Defense, Russian troops managed to cross the Bakhmutka at Fedorivka and penetrate into the rear of the Ukrainian garrison defending Siversk. From Fedorivka, the Russian army may now move northwest and northeast, towards Sviatopokrovsk and Zvanivka, to outflank the Ukrainian garrison holding Siversk. This garrison is regularly targeted by Russian artillery, which continues to locate new FPV drone operator positions. In this footage, we see one such episode. The Ukrainian side tried to hide a large Baba Yaga heavy drone, but Russian forces immediately launched massive artillery strikes on the position. We also recall that in recent days there have been repeated reports of Russian advances in the Serebryanka forest toward the Siversk Donetsk river, so we can see that offensives are intensifying from both the south and the north. There is a high likelihood that the move into Fedorivka is not just another false flag episode, but the real beginning of the Siversk offensive. In any case, we will know in the coming days whether the Russian side continues advancing and builds on this success, or whether the offensive at this sector stalls. Next, we move to the Lyman direction. Adjustments have been recorded both in the southeastern part of the settlement of Udachne, near the village of Myrna to its west, and in the settlement of Chandriholov. Some pro-Russian experts have already partially marked Chandriholov under Russian control, indicating that Russian units have begun storming the settlement. In the coming days, the Russian Ministry of Defense may announce its full capture. We may also see objective control footage. Here, we see no staged flag raising, but rather a steady Russian advance toward Lyman, where the situation is becoming critical. Even Ukrainian sources confirm this. Now we move toward Kupiansk. I remind you that over the past several days, Kupiansk, particularly its western flank, has received a lot of attention, especially after the Russian General Staff reported that the Russian army already controls approximately 50% of the settlement. According to cartographers, experts, and video evidence, in recent days the Ukrainian side has been actively counterattacking west of Kupiansk toward the settlement of Myrov, with the sole goal of deblocking Ukrainian units now trapped in an operational encirclement within the Kupiansk agglomeration. Yesterday, the first footage appeared on which map adjustments were made, showing the battle for Myrov, how Ukrainian units took positions in a building that was later destroyed by a drone. Today, Russian sources put this issue to rest by publishing new footage showing Russian soldiers raising the flag at a crossroads in the center of Myrov. Further analysis was also provided. Footage dated July 1st shows the moment Myrov came under Russian control. Footage from September 1st shows the settlement of Moskovka, where 2 Russian soldiers raised the tricolour in the very center. Here we see other interesting details, especially regarding the fields. In the latest video, the fields are covered in grass, while in the earlier seconds we see fields burned out by combat. There are methods to determine which video is fresh and which is staged or outdated. But overall, the Russian side has confirmed that both Moskovka and Myrov are under full control. This means Kupiansk and the Kupiansk agglomeration are most likely fully blockaded from the west. And that's all, dear friends. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, leave your likes, and all the best to you.